Good afternoon. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host, and we begin with breaking news from Nairobi, where a dramatic rescue operation has just concluded. 6 construction workers, trapped for hours in a collapsed building near the OTC area along Kirinyaga Road, have been pulled out alive. This is a story of survival, coordination, and raises urgent questions about construction safety in our capital. For the next 12 minutes, we'll take you through the timeline of this harrowing event, analyze the multi-agency response, and debate the persistent issue of building collapses in Nairobi. We have a panel of perspectives for you today, but first, let's get the facts on what happened. Our timeline begins this morning, around a.m. A 3-story building under construction near the OTC stage on Kirinyaga Road partially collapsed. Initial reports were chaotic, but it was quickly confirmed that 6 workers were trapped inside the rubble. The first responders on the scene were local residents and nearby business owners who heard the collapse and rushed to help. Within 15 minutes, the Nairobi City County Fire Brigade was alerted. Their first unit arrived on the scene by a.m., marking the official start of the rescue operation. This initial response time, from collapse to first official unit arrival, was approximately 30 minutes. By a.m., the situation was declared a major incident, triggering the involvement of the National Disaster Operations Center, or NDOC. This is the central command for coordinating large-scale emergencies in Kenya. The rescue that unfolded was a textbook example of multi-agency cooperation, but it was far from simple. The Kenya Red Cross, the National Police Service, and specialized urban search and rescue teams all converged on the site. The primary challenge was the instability of the remaining structure. Rescuers couldn't simply move heavy debris with machinery for fear of causing a secondary collapse. This meant much of the work was painstakingly manual. Teams used acoustic listening devices to try and locate the trapped workers by detecting taps or voices. Let's look at the composition of the rescue force on the ground. According to our sources within the NDOC, the operation involved 120 personnel from various agencies. The Nairobi Fire Brigade deployed 40 firefighters with 2 heavy rescue vehicles. The Kenya Red Cross Emergency Team contributed 30 paramedics and logistics experts. The National Police Service provided 50 officers for crowd control and site security. This coordinated force of 120 professionals worked in shifts over several hours. Now, let's visualize the critical timeline of the rescue itself. The first worker was extracted at a.m., just over 2 hours after the collapse. This individual was found in a void near what had been a staircase and suffered minor injuries. The second and third workers were rescued together by p.m. They were trapped in a larger pocket and were able to communicate with rescuers, which guided the teams. The fourth worker was brought out at p.m. The final 2 workers, who were in the most precarious position deep within the rubble, were the focus of a delicate, hours-long operation. They were finally pulled to safety at p.m. and p.m. respectively. So, from the first alert to the final rescue, the entire operation spanned nearly 5.5 hours. All 6 workers were immediately transported to the Kenyatta National Hospital. Hospital officials report that 4 are in stable condition with fractures and lacerations, 1 is being treated for dehydration and shock, and 1 required surgery for a more serious leg injury. Thankfully, there were no fatalities. This brings us to our first debate point, the effectiveness of disaster response in Nairobi. To discuss this, we have with us in spirit 2 contrasting viewpoints. First, the perspective of commendation. Proponents argue that today's outcome, 6 lives saved, is a direct result of lessons learned from past tragedies. The establishment of the NDOC in 2018 has created a clear chain of command. The interoperability between the county fire service and national agencies like the Red Cross has improved significantly. They point to the fact that in a similar collapse in 2021, the response was slower and more fragmented, leading to a higher casualty rate. Today's 5.5-hour operation, they say, demonstrates a system that is maturing and becoming more efficient under pressure. The seamless integration of 120 personnel from 4 different organizations is no small feat. However, there is a counter perspective, one of critique. Critics point to the initial 30-minute response time for the first official unit. In urban rescue, they argue, the first hour, the golden hour is absolutely critical for survival. While local bystanders helped, they lacked the equipment and training for technical rescue. The question is, could a fire station be located closer to high-density construction zones like the OTC area? Furthermore, while the multi-agency team was large, some ask if it was optimally equipped. Does Nairobi have enough modern equipment like seismic listening devices, fiber optic cameras, and hydraulic shoring systems? Or were rescuers relying heavily on basic tools and immense courage? The debate hinges on whether we judge the system by its successful outcome today or by the potential gaps that could lead to failure tomorrow. Let's pivot to the second, and perhaps more contentious, issue. Why did this building collapse? The location near OTC is in a bustling transport hub. OTC locally refers to the old taxi park, a major bus and Matatu terminus. It's an area of immense economic activity and, consequently, intense pressure for commercial and residential space. This brings us to the regulatory environment. The National Construction Authority, or NCA, is the body mandated to oversee all construction projects. They require permits, approve architectural plans, and conduct site inspections. According to their own published data from last year, the NCA conducted over 4,000 site inspections across Nairobi County. Out of those, they issued 785 enforcement notices for violations and ordered the stoppage of 192 projects deemed unsafe. Now, let's visualize a critical piece of data regarding construction oversight. Last year, the NCA's inspection force in Nairobi consisted of 65 qualified building inspectors. They were responsible for monitoring an estimated 2,000 active construction sites in the city at any given time. That is a staggering ratio. With 65 inspectors for 2,000 active sites, each inspector would theoretically be responsible for over 30 sites. Given the complexity of inspections, critics argue this makes effective, continuous oversight nearly impossible. It creates a system that is largely reactive, responding to collapses, rather than proactive in preventing them. Was the building near OTC one of the sites that had been inspected? Had it received any notices? These are questions authorities must now answer. We must also consider the economic and social drivers. Construction is a major employer. For the 6 men rescued today, that site was their livelihood. The pressure to build quickly and cheaply to meet demand can lead contractors to cut corners, using substandard materials, employing unskilled labor, or ignoring engineering specifications. Some developers may also bypass the official approval process entirely, leading to the proliferation of what are often called ghost projects that aren't on the official regulator's radar until something goes wrong. The county government also faces a dilemma. Cracking down too hard can slow economic growth and be politically unpopular, while being too lax costs lives. Our third debate segment looks at the human cost and the path forward. The 6 workers today are lucky. Building collapses in Kenya have a grim history. According to data compiled by the National Disaster Management Unit, in the last 5 years, there have been 14 major building collapses in Nairobi County alone. These incidents have resulted in 52 fatalities and over 120 serious injuries. The economic cost, in terms of lost property, rescue operations, and medical care, runs into billions of shillings. Yet, after each tragedy, there are promises of audit, crackdowns, and reform. The question for our leaders, from President William Ruto's national government to Nairobi's county leadership, is whether this time will be different. What would an effective solution look like? Our panel suggests a multi-pronged approach. First, significantly boost the capacity of the NCA. This means hiring and training more inspectors, perhaps aiming for a ratio of 1 inspector per 10 active sites. Second, leverage technology. Mandate that all construction sites above a certain size use live-streamed cameras that regulators can access remotely. Implement a digital permit and inspection tracking system that is transparent to the public. Third, enhance penalties. Make the consequences for negligent developers and engineers severe enough to be a real deterrent, including criminal liability for deaths. And fourth, invest in the county's fire and rescue service, ensuring they have stations strategically located and equipped with the latest urban search and rescue technology. However, implementing these solutions faces hurdles. The first is budgetary. Hiring hundreds of new inspectors and buying high-tech equipment requires significant investment from the national treasury. With many competing priorities, will building safety rise to the top? The second hurdle is systemic corruption. There are always allegations of bribes to bypass inspections or approve faulty plans. A technological, transparent system could help combat this, but it requires political will to dismantle existing corrupt networks. The third hurdle is public awareness. Tenants and buyers often prioritize low cost and location over verifying a building's approval status. Creating a culture where people demand to see a building's compliance certificate could create bottom-up pressure for change. In conclusion, the successful rescue near OTC is a moment to celebrate the bravery and skill of our emergency responders. 6 families will have their loved ones home tonight because of that effort, but it must also be a moment of sober reflection and decisive action. We have the data, 14 collapses in 5 years. We know the challenges, understaffed inspectors, economic pressure, and regulatory gaps. The debate is not about whether there is a problem, that is clear. The debate is about whether we, as a nation and a city, have the collective will to implement the known solutions. Will we invest in prevention or continue to fund only reaction? The lives saved today are a testament to what we can do in a crisis. The test of our leadership and our society is whether we will act to ensure such a crisis never happens again. For Kenya News Update today, this has been a deep dive into the rescue and the issues it surfaces. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more in-depth reporting. Thank you and good afternoon.